So, dear learners, we discussed in our previous class or in our previous lecture about the Marxian theory of rights. And the last point that we discussed was to understand the Marxian theory of rights, we have to understand the sequence of class struggle, revolution, and the establishment of a socialist state as explained and visualized by Marx. So, let us understand the class struggle, revolution, and socialism in the light of Marxian thinking. Marx believed that the society is divided into two hostile classes and they are haves and have nots. So, at the stage of capitalism, you will find that what happened that the two antagonistic classes or the two classes are haves and have nots, and they can be identified as specifically as capitalist and the proletariat or the working class. So, bourgeois and proletariat or the capitalist and the working class. So, there is conflict going on. When the working class becomes conscious of its exploitation by the capitalist class, it brings revolution. And Marx, he mentions in the Communist Manifesto of 1848, what is the call? The call, in the Communist Manifesto, it has been mentioned, and I quote, "We the communists disdain to conceal our views and aims. We openly declare that we believe in forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at a communistic revolution. Working men of all countries unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains." Unquote. So it means that Marx is giving a clarion call to the working class to bring revolution and to go for the forcible overthrow of existing social conditions. So that is the call for revolution. So after the class struggle, first of all, you have to develop the consciousness among the working class, and after that you will bring revolution. When the revolution has come, after the revolution, what will happen? That there will be establishment of a socialist state. What is socialist state? Socialist state is a state, first of all, what will happen that the working class will bring revolution and they will control state power. And there will be social control over means of production. First of all, abolition of private property will be there. And then all the means of production will be controlled by the state. But here, we have to understand that, for example, if a bourgeois state goes for the nationalization of something, like, for example, nationalization of transportation and communication by the United States of America, that cannot be called a step towards socialism. That can be understood as a state monopoly capitalism, not socialism. For socialism, the precondition is that, first of all, the power or the state power should be in the hands of the working class. So when the state is controlled by the working class, and if that state goes for the nationalization of means of production, that will be socialism. So there will be a state control over means of production by that state after the revolution. And this state will try, this state will create conditions for the withering away of the state and to achieve the final culmination of Marxism, that is communism, where a classless and a stateless society is established. The socialist state will also destroy the remnant of the bourgeois class, and it will promote, inculcate socialist ethics, not the capitalist ethics. All the remnant of the bourgeois class is to be destroyed. So when the socialist state has been established, what are the rights that will be given? And here we can understand the Marxian theory of rights. Rights in a socialist state. A socialist state will prioritize social and economic rights, not the civil and political rights. Keep in mind that Marxists believe that after revolution, the dictatorship of the proletariat will be established. They never claim that democracy will be established. It is the dictatorship of the proletariat. So that is why, most of the time you'll find that it is mentioned in the writings of Mao, Lenin, and other thinkers that people's democratic dictatorship. Why democratic? Because all the communists are voting, means all the people have got the right to vote. So that way it is the democratic dictatorship. But it is a dictatorship. Why? Because for the capitalist class, it's a dictatorship. So right has a class character. Keep in mind, Marx is saying rights, have class character. So the class character of the rights, you can understand. Earlier in the bourgeois state, the rights were the privileges of the bourgeois class. Now what happens that the rights will be given only to the proletariat class, not to the capitalist class. Because that, that rights that the capitalist class was claiming in the bourgeois class was right to exploit the, working class. Here that right will not be given to the capitalist class. So in the socialist state, we have to remember that what will be done, that it will prioritize social and economic rights. And the first job of the socialist state is to satisfy the basic needs of the people. That is the first job of the socialist state. The basic needs of the people. For example, education, health, shelter, clothes, bread and basket, all these are the basic needs of the people. And they should be satisfied. It is the responsibility of the socialist state. Why? Because according to Marxian approach, an unemployed, poor, landless, homeless, clothless, unhealthy and a starving person cannot enjoy civil and political rights. So that is why what will happen, that the social and economic rights will be given priority, because civil and political rights will just be illusion. As Marxian thinkers believe that an unemployed or a jobless, poor, landless, houseless or homeless, clothless, unhealthy and starving person cannot enjoy civil and political rights. So the satisfaction of the material needs is an essential condition of life, and the right to freedom of expression and development of personality come later. These are the things, they will come later. They are not the priority. Civil and political rights, development of the personality. First of all, the hunger, thirst. These things should be satisfied. Right to health, right to education. According to Marx, human rights in the real sense of the term can be realized only in a socialist state. It cannot be enjoyed in a bourgeois state. Then, one of the most important aspects of the socialist state or the Marxian approach to human rights is abolition of the right to private property. There won't be anything like right to private property. We were discussing about John Locke's theory of natural rights, and John Locke said, he is also father of liberalism. So John Locke says that there are three natural rights that the people have, and these rights are right to life, liberty and property. And these rights cannot be taken away by any agency, by any institution whatsoever. But here what is happening, that Marx is saying that the first thing is that abolition of private property. Without abolition of private property, human rights cannot be promoted. Now, here we have to differentiate between personal property and private property. A Marxian state or a socialist state will allow right to personal property, not the private property. What is the difference that we have to understand? Personal property is a property for our consumption. So, for example, if a person has a house for his family, he has a car, or he has a land that he can cultivate himself, that much land. So that is personal property. It will not be taken away by the state. What happens that the personal property is allowed, but the private property is not allowed. So the personal property is property for consumption, whereas private property is property for exploitation. Therefore, a right to private property is to be abolished. Then only you can promote human rights. Otherwise, there will be social and economic inequality. And when the social and economic inequality is there, civil and political rights cannot be enjoyed by all the people, especially those who are on the other side of the fence, means who are at the receiving end. So, for example, if a landlord is there with thousands of acres of land, he will employ other landless laborers, and these landless laborers will be on the mercy of the landlord. So that is private property. Similarly, if a means of production is there in the hands of the capitalist, what will happen? That they will try to manipulate through what is called the surplus value, and they will exploit the dependencies of the unemployed people, and ultimately the exploitation of the working class will be there. So that is why the means of production will not be there in the private hands. Rather, a service oriented economy, a regulated economy will be there. So that is why we, first of all, this is the cardinal principle of Marxian theory of rights, that right to private property will not be granted at all, rather it will be abolished. Other Marxist scholars like Lenin, Mao, Rosa Luxemburg, Antonio Gramsci, Althusser, and Pulanza, they have broadened the scope of Marxian analysis or Marxist analysis. Their contribution is also important to understand the Marxian theory of rights. For example, Lenin highlights the exploitative nature of capitalism, and his book Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, exposes capitalist states' exploitation of weaker countries. How the weaker countries are exploited. And weaker countries, when we are saying, the countries can be understood as the aggregate of individuals. So in that sense, how the poor people are exploited by the rich people. How the poor countries are exploited by the rich countries, the capitalist countries, because they produce more than they can consume. And that's why they will need raw material from the poor countries, and they will bring finished product from their own country to sell in these markets. So they will be controlling market, and they will try to promote what is called free market economy. So that is why this aspect is very important to understand. So that if the people are suffering from poverty, hunger, unemployment, starvation, civil war-like situation, violence, political violence, etc., in the poor countries, it is not because these people are bad. This is nothing but because of because of the scarcity, that the people are fighting, violence is there, and all that has to be understood. And here you will find that the imperialist exploitation of the poor countries is responsible for this. On the other hand, Althusser talks about two apparatuses a bourgeois state maintains. And what are the two apparatuses according to him? Number one is ideological, and number two is repressive. So these apparatuses are responsible for the violation of the rights of the common people. According to him, in a bourgeois state, for example, what happens? The ideological apparatus means all the means of propaganda, or the means that are applied for promoting the interest of the capitalist class. They may be educational institutions, colleges, universities, religious institutions, media, and various other means of communication. So the main job of the ideological apparatus is to create habitual obedience for the laws of the state or the policies of the state. And remember that law itself, according to Marx, in a bourgeois state is an instrument of exploitation. Althusser also points out that not only the ideological state a state maintains, but it also maintains what is called the coercive or the repressive apparatus, which includes army, police, bureaucracy, jails, prison, torture chambers, where the citizens are tortured if they are not agreeing with the policies and the programs of the state. So, third degree is a common feature in most of the countries where the helpless citizens are detained and tortured. So, here the main job of the coercive apparatus is, the ideological apparatus will try to pursue the agenda of, convincing people to obey the laws of the state and be submissive. And if ideological apparatus fail, then the state applies what is called the repressive apparatus, that is the use of police, army, bureaucracy, central forces and all. That will be there. So where the people will be forced to accept the policies, programs and the laws of the state. So, here what happens that for example, if the poor people are being exploited, if, their area, for example, if they are living in the forest and if the forest is going to be used for the mining, which is going to contaminate the water, that they drink, it is going to destroy the flora and fauna, it is going to disturb the ecological balance of that particular area, then these people will try to resist. And if they try to resist, means the people living in the jungles or the tribal belts, for example, indigenous people, those who have been living over there for centuries, then what will happen that the repressive apparatus of the state will be used. So here what happens that the right to resistance is taken away. Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist thinker, deals with intellectual hegemony and domination of the ruling bourgeois. Marx says that the economically dominant class is the politically dominant class. Here what happens that Antonio Gramsci is going to add, a tool to analyze the domination of the capitalist class. According to him, when the capitalist class is dominating, it is not dominating only through economic dominance, but the intellectual hegemony and domination, that is also, is to be understood. Intellectual hegemony and domination, why? Because the idea of the ruling class becomes the ruling idea. When I say the idea of the ruling class becomes the ruling idea, we can understand it in the light of what the constructivists believe, that truth is a social construct. And if the truth is a social construct, then we should remember that the enemies and the friends are also socially constructed. So, a bourgeois state can project a segment of population as the enemy of the state. And because of its intellectual hegemony and domination, that segment of the population will be facing the wrath of the state and sometimes even the other segments of the population. So that intellectual hegemony and domination of the state is to be understood when we are trying to understand the Marxian theory of rights. So that is why in the bourgeois state rights are not possible when we are saying this, because every attempt to resist the exploitation will be criminalized. The protest will be criminalized, resistance will be criminalized, and through ideological and repressive apparatus or through the intellectual hegemony and domination, the state will be in a position, a bourgeois state will be in a position to construct such a narrative that the people, those who are trying to resist exploitation, will be treated as terrorists or the people who are committing the act of treason. This analysis of Antonio can be applied to understand the phenomenon of the politics of human rights used by the capitalist class, used by the capitalist countries against the global south. This is also important to understand. At the international level, what happens that human rights have been used as tools or weapons by the dominant powers of the world. They have been intervening in many, many countries of the world in the name of human rights violation or for protecting the rights of the people. For example, we found that there was outside intervention in Iraq in the name of violation of human rights, in the name of WMD. There was outside intervention in many other countries like Somalia and other countries. So ultimately, this happens. Similarly, the child labor was used as a weapon against our own country in the international market. And our carpet industry that was flourishing in 1990s after the liberalization, because of this child labor issue, we faced the wrath of the major powers of the world, and that India, which was doing so well in the carpet, export, that export declined substantially. So they can use human rights as a weapon against the country or against the adversaries, and that's why this intellectual hegemony and domination and other kind of domination is to be understood. So that is why how the global south has been exploited in the name of human rights, how the global south has been destroyed, or sometimes turbulence has been created in many, many states in the name of human rights, that we have to see. After discussing this, now we should identify the specific rights that are granted by a socialist state. These rights include right to work, right to unemployment bonus. Either, employment is to be given, and if unemployment is there, state is not in a position to provide jobs, create jobs, then what should happen? That unemployment bonus should be given to the people. Right to adequate wages means the dependencies of the working class cannot be exploited. Adequate wages should be given. The people, those who are working, they should not be exploited. Their labor should not be exploited, and they should be paid adequately. Right to social security, that is must. Right to health, right to education, right to rest and leisure. Earlier, before Marxian movements of the socialist movement, people used to work 14 hours a day. Thanks to socialist consciousness and socialist movements, that now nobody can be forced to work beyond 8 hours. It is already international convention. This is the international norm that has been accepted. Similarly, holidays, these are must for the working class as well. Right to rest, right to leisure is there. So that is why, different kind of rights that we have got today, so far as the labor laws are concerned, that is thanks to socialism. So that is why what happens, that right to rest and leisure, that is also emphasized. Right to freedom of speech and expression. But you will find right to freedom of speech and expression can be curtailed, and it is curtailed in all the countries of the world. For example, in our constitution also, right to freedom of expression is subject to many reasonable conditions. According to the socialist state, what is the reasonable condition that can be imposed upon the exercise of right to freedom of speech and expression? That is, the freedom of expression will not be used to adversely affect the interest of the ruling interest of the working class. So that is why the reasonable restriction, it means that you cannot condemn, criticize socialism or the socialist government. That is not allowed. Right to join trade unions, again very important. Trade unions, because they fight for the interests of the working class, so that is why right to join trade unions. Right to vote, right to personal property, not private property, keep in mind, right to personal property, which is property for consumption, not property for exploitation, that is private property. Right to seek and grant asylum. A socialist state will grant asylum. At the same time, if socialist revolutionaries are facing the wrath of the reactionary regimes, they have a right to seek asylum. Right to personal property, that we have already highlighted. Right to criticize religion. Again, interesting, because, according to Marx, religion is opium of the masses. If religion is the opium of the masses, then right to criticize religion should be given. It cannot be called blasphemy. So, right to criticize religion is also emphasized. And right to social and economic equality and justice. These are the rights that are promoted, protected, and given in the socialist state. Critical appraisal of the theory. Marxist theory, we are going to have the critical appraisal of the Marxist theory of rights. So, first of all, you have, we see that ideological political monolithism of the ruling parties of the socialist states maintains a suffocating environment in which the enjoyments of rights becomes difficult. So, in the name of dictatorship of the proletariat, what happens that the dictatorship of the Communist Party is established, and the dictatorship of the Communist Party leads to a kind of environment in which people feel suffocated. There is only one ideology that will be allowed to exist. There will be only one political party that will be allowed to exist. Other political parties cannot be there. Then you have the freedom of choice. The freedom of choice is restricted. In the socialist state, you will find, or the rights that they are trying to promote, what happens that the freedom of choice is restricted. The economy will be service oriented, and that is why everything will be regulated. So you will not have that much of soaps, cosmetics, and all in the market. It is said during the Cultural Revolution of Mao, forget about cosmetics, even the mirror was not available in the market. Because he said that cosmetics, mirror, these are not important. What is important? Bread is important. There is a strict censorship of freedom of thought and expression in socialist states. So, the socialist states are criticized for restricting freedom of thought and expression. So, the people don't have any right to criticize a socialist government or to criticize the Communist Party. The right to freedom of religion and conscience is compromised. Very much right that, since it is believed that religion is opium of the masses, so that is why the right to freedom of religion is curtailed. The dictatorship of the proletariat eventually became the dictatorship of the Communist Party. That is very much evident. Mao's cultural revolution and Stalin's Great Purge are often cited as examples of colossal violations of human rights by the socialist states. It is said that in the Cultural Revolution of Mao, more than 2 million people were killed. It is said that in the Great Purge, Stalin killed more than 1 million people. So, this kind of colossal violation of human rights are cited by the critics of the Marxian theory of rights. In conclusion, what we understand that Marxian theory of rights views rights as a bourgeois notion, which developed at a particular juncture of history to promote the interest of the rising mercantile class. So, the class character of the rights is being emphasized. This theory believes in the class character of rights and maintains that rights change according to the changing circumstances. Contribution of the Marxist theory of rights to human rights that we are going to have quickly here. First of all, Marxism, socialism played a crucial role in popularizing economic and social rights. So that is why in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, we find that these rights were given place. The liberal democratic states provided social and economic rights to people under pressure from the rising tide of socialism. This is also important that the laissez-faire liberalism was promoted by the bourgeois states. This theory places responsibility on states to satisfy the material needs of citizens. So if the people are poor, or the poverty is there in a state, then the state will be blamed, not the people. Recognition of the right to work, adequate wages, rest and leisure, health, education, and social security is Marxism's significant contribution to the catalog of rights. There is no doubt in it. So, this theory led to movement for social justice and equality across the globe. The analytical tools applied by the later Marxian scholars help to understand the causes of the plight of working class and suggest deliverance. This is why, despite the fall of the Soviet Union and the collapse of Marxism in Eurasia, Marxism is still relevant as a great intellectual and philosophical tradition and ideology. So that is why the intellectual relevance of Marxism to understand the exploitation inherent in capitalism or in the name of globalization, etc., that is being applied even today, Marxian tool to expose the exploitative nature of capitalism or the economic system that is prevailing in the world. So, in the light of this, we can say that Marxist theory has given a significant contribution to human rights. With this, dear learners, we have already completed our discussion on the four major or important theories of human rights, namely that was first of all it was natural rights, then legal theory of rights, then historical theory of rights, and now Marxian theory of rights. So, in the light of these theories of rights, we can develop a perspicacious understanding of the growth of right, content of right, nature of rights, and why the different countries have different kind of approaches towards rights. Thank you very much.